Just wanted to say a few words ahead of this video because these videos come off the back of a huge lot of Eaglemoss Star Trek ships that I picked up recently, and so I've put up all the duplicates on eBay for you to have a look at, and I'll include links around and about the place. So if you've got any sort of interest in getting hold of a few of these to have a look at them for yourself, you can do so for a while at least, because it looks like they're not going to go flying off the shelves. I've tried to price them quite reasonably, so do please go and have a look, and without further ado, I will get on with the main video. Cheers. So this is another interesting one. This is a Borg tactical cube. So basically it's a Borg cube, only nastier, which is kind of a contradiction in terms, obviously, because we've seen Borg cubes hold up against a mass of Starfleet ships before now, but this one is even nastier. And the magazine makes the very sensible point that this is, well, it's the home turf of the Borg, where they've just been given a bloody nose by species 8472. So I guess it would be logical that they would try and enhance the power and protection of their standard cubes by coming up with a variant, which is this. Now this one involved the Unimatrix Zero storyline, whereby Voyager was keen to try and help Borg who got control of themselves when they were regenerating, so they could actually form a splinter group of Borg within the collective. And the idea behind going up against this particularly nasty piece of hardware was to try and enable those individuals to retain their individuality day to day, rather than just when they were in the Unimatrix Zero kind of artificial construct that they could visit. So, of course, the Borg Queen wasn't having any of that, and ultimately she actually orders this cube to self-destruct in an attempt to stop the virus that they're planting from spreading. But in order to get on board it in the first place, they had a really tough time, because it's designed with sort of, all the sort of good old regenerative shielding around its central plexus. It's got beam weapons, it's got missiles, which we don't really often see the Borg using. Certainly not early doors. They were all about their sort of, the beam weaponry early doors. But this is a Class 4 tactical cube. It's 3 kilometers along each of its axes, so it's massive. Transwarp capable, 64,000 Borg on board, and Janeway et al. Actually go in partially assimilated themselves in order to sort of blend in, because it's the only way they could do it, apparently. So it's quite an interesting episode, and again, it's another example of how the idea of the Borg was being evolved all the way through Voyager, because obviously we see quite a lot of the Borg during Voyager because we're on their home territory. But if you haven't seen those episodes, they're quite impressive. Poor old Delta Flyer buys the farm in this one, at least this iteration of it does. But it was just, apparently, this is quite funny, because the guys are sort of saying, guys, it's a cube. You want me to redesign a cube? Well, it's a cube. I mean, there's only so much you can do. So basically, they just gave it armor. I guess, ironically, in the same way that Voyager would later get armor, the design guys just added armor to the exterior of this cube to try and differentiate it, to make it clear to the audience that it was, tougher than average, basically. Which is clever. It's a good visual clue. And then the rest of this issue has just got sort of background on how the Borg did indeed evolve over time. I mean, even with Next Generation, we saw changes to Borg behaviour, and sort of Borg breaking away from the collective as a concept. So that was introduced quite early on, because I think the fundamental problem with the Borg for Next Generation was they made them so incredibly powerful. The question was, well, if they do ever come back, how are they actually going to be able to defeat them? Because, they needed to soften them up a bit to actually allow for their ultimate defeat. Because I believe that with Best of Both Worlds, they sort of did the first part and then wondered how on earth they were actually going to get the crew out of it. Because they did seem pretty implacable as enemies went. And Q knew that when he introduced us to them early, of course. So there, here we have the Borg cube sort of throwing out, you know, the Borg equivalent of photon torpedoes, which was we hadn't really seen until that point. So so that's that. This one's quite an unusual one because in terms of the actual model, it's not in a standard size box because of course it's a cube, but it's kind of a truncated size of box, which always amuses me with the Borg, because they're supposed to be the big baddies, but they get the smallest boxes because they have the most compact dimensions, being sort of you know, geometrical shapes. So it's kind of a downside if you're a Borg fan, is that you end up with quite small boxes for these guys. I don't know if the Borg would be particularly bothered by such things, because it's, from their point of view, it's all about efficiencies. They probably approve. So what else I can really tell you about the Borg? I mean, you know, most people would know about the Borg, obviously, as a big bad of Star Trek, and yet of course over time they've become somewhat less of a big bad. Now, this is really plastic. This is probably one of the lightest Eaglemoss models I've ever felt, actually. I suspect the original cube was probably not dissimilarly light. I think just because there's probably not. It just is what it is. It's a lot of detailing, but it isn't a lot of structure. So there's perhaps no real point to making it metal and making it heavier and more expensive to produce, because it is what it is. It's just kind of, and there's nothing that can snap off it, because again it is kind of what it is. It's just a solid piece of plastic. So it's all just down to the you know, the paint quality and everything else, I suppose. But you know, it's a cube. What can I say? It's a box. It is what it is. You can't really get overly excited about it. I was thinking that was where it needs to be inserted, and that's where it goes into the base. So it's just one of these ones where it just slots on, basically. So you probably just slot it on where you want it to. That seems like a reasonable place to put it. God, that was definitely a senior moment on my part. Good lord. I do wonder if there is one side that's perhaps better than the others. That might be it, actually. That's perhaps the best one. That seems to be the least slidey. But I mean, obviously, being a cube, it doesn't really matter where it sits. It just is. So there you go. One Borg tactical cube. And as we all know by now, resistance is actually not at all futile, because we seem to keep on beating them. So there you go. I refer you to Star Trek Picard as a prime example of just such an occasion. Yes. Right, moving on to the next. Cheers for now.